For years, the idea of controlling a computer with your brain sounded like something impossible. But Neuralink, the brainchild of Elon Musk, has been working to turn that fiction into reality. And now, they've actually done it. Neuralink's latest human trials have left scientists stunned. Not just because they implanted a brain chip successfully, but because the results are surpassing even the boldest expectations. So, how did we get here? And why are scientists so shocked by the results? Let's break it down. In early 2024, Neuralink successfully implanted its first chip in a real human patient, and what followed has been nothing short of groundbreaking. The trial is proving that brain-machine interfaces aren't just a concept anymore. They're real, they work, and they're getting better every day. But of course, not everything has been smooth sailing. There have been challenges, setbacks, and plenty of skeptics along the way. Neuralink is doing something unique, except this time, it's real. They're planting chips in human brains, and guess what? It's actually working. Not in some vague, we're making progress kind of way, but in a paralyzed people are now controlling computers with their thoughts kind of way. Yeah, that kind of working. Back in 2016, when Elon Musk first announced Neuralink, most people shrugged it off as just another one of his wild ideas. A brain chip that could help people with paralysis? Cool concept, but let's be real. Sounds impossible, right? Fast forward a few years, and Neuralink has not only made it possible, but the results are exceeding expectations. The journey started with animal trials, because obviously, you don't just stick a chip into a human head right away. In 2020, Neuralink showed the world a pig named Gertrude with an implant in her brain, proving the device could read neural signals in real time. Then came a monkey named Pager, who played Pong using nothing but his mind. At that point, people started paying attention. But animals are one thing, humans are another. The real game changer happened in early 2024 when Neuralink finally got FDA approval and implanted its first brain chip into a human. Meet Noland Arbaugh, a guy who had been paralyzed from the shoulders down since a tragic diving accident in 2016. The surgery was a success, but what happened next left scientists stunned. Within days, Noland was controlling a computer cursor with his thoughts. Not just moving it around aimlessly, he was actually using it, playing games, browsing the internet, doing things he hadn't done in years. At first, he could move the cursor at about 4.6 bits per second, BPS, but that number kept climbing. Soon, he hit 8 BPS, which is dangerously close to the average speed of an able-bodied person using a traditional mouse, around 10 BPS. In other words, this thing isn't just functional, it's fast. But like any new technology, it wasn't all smooth sailing. A few months in, Neuralink hit a snag. A large number of electrode threads, the tiny wires that actually read brain signals, started retracting from Noland's brain. Not ideal. But instead of panicking, the team at Neuralink adjusted the software, improving the decoding algorithms to compensate for the lost connections. And just like that, Noland was back in action. Then came the second patient, Alex, another person with a spinal cord injury. This time, things moved even faster. Within 5 minutes of the implant being activated, Alex was already controlling a cursor. By the next day, he was using 3D design software like he'd been doing it for years. No long learning curve, no endless troubleshooting, just straight-up mind control, working right out of the box. So, here's where we stand. In just a few years, Neuralink has gone from a wild idea to a working brain-machine interface that's already changing lives. The technology is moving at a ridiculous pace, and if they can scale it up, we could be looking at one of the biggest medical and technological breakthroughs of our time. A future where people control devices with their minds isn't coming. It's already here. The only question is, how far will it go? Neuralink's brain implant technology is pushing the limits of what's possible, but let's be honest, it hasn't been all smooth sailing. The company's first human trials revealed a major problem that no one saw coming. The implant's electrode threads, the tiny wires responsible for reading brain signals, started pulling out of the patient's brain. Not a minor hiccup. About 85% of them retracted, reducing the device's ability to function. This was a huge deal because those threads are the heart of Neuralink's brain-machine interface. Without them, the implant is basically just a tiny piece of metal in the skull, doing nothing. Scientists were stunned. The big question was, why did this happen? Well, the human brain isn't exactly a stable surface. It moves constantly. Every time we breathe, move our head, or even have a heartbeat, the brain shifts slightly within the skull. This natural movement turned out to be a major problem for the delicate electrode threads. When they were implanted, they stayed in place at first. But over time, the movement of the brain caused many of them to pull back, disconnecting from the neurons they were supposed to read. For Nolan Darbaugh, the first Neuralink patient, this could have been a disaster. After all, what's the point of a brain chip if it suddenly stops working? But Neuralink didn't panic. Instead, the team immediately got to work on a fix. At first, they didn't jump straight to surgery to re-implant the threads. That would have been risky and unnecessary. Instead, they took a software approach. Neuralink's engineers reprogrammed the implant's decoding algorithms to make the most of the remaining connections. Basically, they told the system, hey, you're working with fewer sensors now, so let's tweak things to make sure we still get a clear signal. And guess what? It worked. Even with the majority of his electrode threads disconnected, Nolan was still able to use the device to control a computer with his mind. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but it proved something important. Neuralink's software could adapt to hardware failures. This was a crucial breakthrough because it meant that even if some electrode threads fail in future patients, the system can still function. But let's be real, this wasn't a permanent fix. A brain implant that loses most of its connections isn't exactly ideal. Neuralink knew they had to do better for their next patient. When it came time for the second human trial, Neuralink had already made some major changes. The first big improvement? The way the surgery was performed. Surgeons fine-tuned their technique to make sure the electrode threads were placed in a way that minimized the chances of them retracting. This included ensuring a more secure positioning and reducing the gap between the implant and the brain. But the real game changer was in the hardware itself. Neuralink didn't just rely on better surgical precision, they also made modifications to the implant design. Though they haven't revealed all the details, reports suggest they worked on improving how the threads anchor themselves in the brain tissue. In simple terms, they made them less likely to slip out. And the results? Night and day. The second patient, Alex, didn't experience any thread retraction at all. From the moment his implant was activated, he was controlling a computer cursor with his thoughts just like Nolan, but with more stability. No sudden drop in functionality, no scrambling to fix issues afterward. Just smooth performance. This was a huge win for Neuralink. It proved that the issues with the first patient weren't a fundamental flaw in the technology, but rather an engineering challenge that could be overcome. And overcoming it this quickly? That's impressive. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Neuralink isn't stopping at just fixing thread retraction. They're already thinking ahead to future upgrades. One of the biggest ideas being explored? Making the implant wireless, not just for data transmission, which it already is, but also for power. Right now, the implant runs on an internal battery that needs to be recharged wirelessly. But what if they could develop a system where the brain itself powers the device? Sounds crazy, but bioelectric energy harvesting is already being researched in other areas of neuroscience. Then there's the potential for deeper integration with artificial intelligence. Right now, the implant translates raw neural signals into simple commands. Move a cursor, click on an icon, etc. But what if, instead of just interpreting brain activity, it could enhance it? Imagine an AI-assisted thought process that helps people process information faster or recall memories with greater clarity. It's a long way off, but knowing Musk, that's probably the direction he wants to take it. Of course, not everyone is on board with the idea of brain implants evolving beyond medical applications. Privacy concerns are huge. If a device can read your thoughts, what's stopping it from being hacked? Neuralink insists that their security protocols are airtight. But let's be honest, hackers are always a step ahead. If a Neuralink chip ever gets compromised, it won't just be your email that's at risk. It could be your mind itself. Neuralink is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible in the realm of neurotechnology, but the journey ahead is both exhilarating and complex. The company's ambitious goals are not just about restoring basic motor functions, but are also poised to revolutionize our understanding of human cognition, communication, and the treatment of neurological disorders. However, with great innovation comes even greater responsibility. And Neuralink must navigate a path that balances groundbreaking progress with ethical considerations that could shape the future of humanity. In 2025, Neuralink is taking a significant step forward by expanding its trials. The company plans to implant devices in 20 to 30 more individuals over the course of the year, a move that's both exciting and critical. This expansion isn't just about scaling up, it's about collecting a wealth of data that will be crucial for refining the technology and proving its long-term safety and effectiveness. Neuralink's main goal is to gather as much information as possible to ensure that the brain-computer interface, BCI, performs reliably, especially for those with spinal cord injuries. By increasing the number of participants, Neuralink hopes to address any unforeseen complications while refining its system to ensure that it can provide meaningful improvements to the lives of those who need it most. While Neuralink's rapid progress is impressive, it is important to consider the regulatory and ethical frameworks that must guide these advancements. Given that we are talking about directly interfacing with the human brain, the implications of this technology are vast. Neuralink has worked closely with regulatory bodies such as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to ensure that its trials are conducted safely and responsibly. Their efforts to meet the necessary regulatory standards have paved the way for human trials, with the hope of eventually making BCIs accessible to patients worldwide. But the ethical questions go much deeper than just approval processes. How do we ensure that patients' rights are respected? What safeguards will be in place to protect individuals from potential misuse or manipulation of the technology? These questions are as critical as the technology itself. Moreover, as Neuralink's capabilities expand, so too does the potential for more complex applications. Initially, the focus was on restoring motor functions, helping people with paralysis regain some level of independence by enabling them to control devices through their thoughts. But now, Neuralink is venturing into even more ambitious areas. The company envisions a future where its BCIs could treat neurological disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even conditions like blindness. Imagine a world where individuals who have lost their vision could potentially regain it with the help of a BCI. Neuralink's trials are already showing early signs of success in animal models, and the possibilities for human patients are staggering. The ability to treat conditions that were once considered irreversible could change the lives of millions and offer hope where there was none. But perhaps the most fascinating and controversial aspect of Neuralink's future is its potential to enhance cognitive abilities. The idea of augmenting human intelligence might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's becoming a realistic possibility. Neuralink has already made strides in enabling people to control computers with their minds. But what if those same brain implants could help enhance memory, processing speed, or even enable direct thought-to-thought communication between individuals? This could reshape how we think, learn, and communicate. However, this technological leap also raises major ethical concerns. The prospect of enhancing human cognition opens a Pandora's box of questions. Who decides who gets access to such enhancements? Could it create a divide between those who can afford these technologies and those who cannot? And what happens to personal identity when we begin to alter the very fabric of our cognitive abilities? These are not easy questions to answer, but they will need to be addressed if BCI technologies like Neuralinks are to find widespread, responsible use. So, what's next for Neuralink? Well, as their trials expand and new breakthroughs unfold, one thing is clear. We're just scratching the surface of what could be the future of human-computer interaction. But whether it's for medical treatments, cognitive enhancement, or even brain-to-brain communication, the path forward will need to be navigated with care, responsibility, and a whole lot of oversight. What do you think? Is Neuralink's technology a game changer, or are we walking into uncharted, risky territory?